Welcome to A Look at the Next President, a new series airing each week at this time where we take a look at the backgrounds of Democratic presidential nominee Governor Michael Dukakis and the Republican presidential nominee Vice President George Bush. Each week we will talk with family, friends, and people who have known the candidates personally and professionally. This week we talk with George W. Bush, the eldest son of Vice President and Mrs. Bush, and Sandy Cohen-Bacalar, a high school friend of Governor Dukakis.
I'm going to be as low-key as possible. I think that there is well, first of all, I think the important thing is to be ourselves and not try to be anything else, and not commercialize the relationship between my dad and our family. And so I think all of us feel a responsibility to our parents to not show off or gimmick up the situation, and to be responsible adults. We're a little different from most in that, you know, I'm 42 years old. I've lived a lot of my life already. I feel very secure as to who I am and where I've been, and don't feel a need to be anything other than kind of a half-broke oil man from West Texas. But I think they're not naming specifics. I think there is a responsibility. I think you'll find us to be a low-keyed family.
Do you feel pressure from all the attention?
Some, not nearly as much as I would 20 years ago. I still feel my blood pressure rise when people mischaracterize my father. I love him and respect him, and come to his defense. I think I'm more reasoned about what politics is all about now. I ran for the United States Congress in 1978, came in second in a two-man race. So I understand a lot of politics, but I do feel pressure a little bit. I don't feel pressure to perform in any way, but I feel the pressure of anticipation of how the outcome will be, and I don't like some of the coverage that George Bush gets. If I think it's unfair, I tend to rise to the bait, but pretty relaxed about things.
Ever a time when you have a competition among your siblings, whether a total of 5?
Yeah, 5. Well, there's always good, healthy competition. We're always trying to stomp each other in horseshoes or the tennis court, but no, we've shared the responsibility and the burden. Our country is huge. We're all from different regions of the country. I'm from Texas, Jeb is from Florida, Brother Neil's from the West, Colorado, and Marvin's from Virginia, and Dorothy's from Maine. So when it comes to the spotlight or campaigning for our dad, we've got a regional separation to begin with. We love to appear together because we tend to complement and bounce off each other, but really not in terms of who's going to be more successful, whose stack of chips is higher than the other person's. My dad never valued a person based on their net worth, and hence we don't either. And so the competition is good, clean, healthy competition.
How Texan are you?
I'm pretty Texan. I was, Midland, Texas is where I was raised. Houston, Texas is where I spent a lot of time, and then after a stint at Harvard Business School, I chose to return back to Midland to try to make enough money to survive, and I really have a great affinity for Texas. It's a great state. It's a state where I'm going to spend my life, and I think it's got a lot to offer for people.
What do you most remember about growing up in Midland, Texas?
I would say that ours was a life of Little League baseball, very outdoors neighborhood, a lot of backyard barbecues. My mother and I and Dad, I can remember clearly going to see the Odessa High Broncos play the Midland High Bulldogs over in Odessa, one of the big regional clashes that still to this date is high-powered high school football. It was plain and simple, not very sophisticated, but full of good, solid values. And I think when I had a choice of moving anywhere in the country and chose to move back to Midland, it was those early childhood memories that lured me back. Midland is, in the 70s, during the oil boom, was a gold rush type town. It was entrepreneurship at its highest form. It was exciting. A lot of people coming in and out, and a lot of people drilling wells, and it was a chance for people who didn't have much to begin with to have a shot to make some money. And now it's the exact opposite, of course, but it's an exciting place to live. not too good to look at, but good folks and a good place to be.
George Bush, what's it like to be a Texan?
Well, I feel pretty lucky to be a Texan for starters. My folks moved to West Texas when I was 2 years old. I was born in my dad's sophomore year at Yale, and we moved to 2, and that's all I've known what it's be to be a Texan. I've been a Texan in Texas. I've also been a Texan outside of Texas, and I think there's two different feelings. Inside of Texas, it's a very comfortable feeling. People are great. There's a lot to do here. There's kind of I think a can-do spirit in Texas. Outside of Texas, you're kind of an anomaly. People always want to know what a Texan is like, and those of us who have been Texans outside of Texas, we have to restrain ourselves from not being too much of a Texan outside of Texas. But I love it. I mean, Texas is my life, or a big part of my life. I'm very proud of it, proud of the heritage that I've got here, and wouldn't trade it.
What have the last couple of years been like? We keep hearing that Dallas is in trouble and Houston's in trouble.
Well, for me personally, it's been unbelievably exciting. I'm doing something that I think everybody who's ever been to a baseball game would love to do, and that is be a part of baseball. It's a fabulous sport, so I've had a wonderful time. I think Texas is beginning to rebound. I think the psychological spirit is much higher here. I was in West Texas prior to moving to Dallas, and people there are still a little depressed because the oil industry busts. It's a one-horse town, really, which is oil. People haven't quite rebounded yet from the severe depression that we have been through out there. But in the big metropolitan cities, Houston and Dallas, I think the economies are rebounding. And most importantly, as a result of that, people are beginning to feel a lot better about themselves and about their future. And so much of the psychology of the society is hope. Is there hope? And I think a lot of people here feel that way. So Texas is a force to be reckoned with economically and politically. And there are some wonderful things on our horizon here in Texas. I think the free trade agreement with Mexico is going to make Texas an incredible place to do business.
Why?
Well, it's going to be the gateway of goods and services coming from Mexico. Mexico has got such incredible resources, untapped resources, labor, great pool of labor, and the need for capital. And as people discover the benefits of doing business in Mexico, and vice versa, Texas will become the gateway for all that trade. It'll mean cultural exchanges, it'll mean people exchanges, it'll mean big business opportunities. We're also fixing to build a super collider here, which will put the United States on the forefront of technological advancement. It's right south of Dallas, but it affects a giant area. So the combination of those two things, plus the natural resource base of Texas, agricultural and energy and high-tech business, makes Texas a great frontier and a horizon. And combine that with the entrepreneurial spirit, it's a place where young people who are interested in making a buck ought to come.
How'd you get into baseball?
Well, I kind of stumbled into it. It was right at the campaign, I think right after you and I talked. In 1988, a buddy of mine, Bill DeWitt, whose daddy used to own the Cincinnati Reds, called me and said he thought that the Texas Rangers were for sale. And I said, well, I happen to know the owner. A man I grew up with up around in Midland, Texas, an oil guy named Eddie Childs. I'm mad too, Eddie, and the real characters of Texas business, and a great guy. And I called Eddie on the phone, and after the campaign I went to see him, and the team was for sale. And I was able to put together the group of capital to buy the club, most of it from Texas, here in Texas, and a lot of it from, some of it from outside the state, and bought it. But it was something I knew I wanted to do once I saw the opportunity was available. It meshes nicely with my life right now. It would mesh nicely with my life no matter what my life was like, by the way. But when your daddy is president of the United States, you're a public person, whether you want to be or not. And my job now is to sell tickets for the Texas Rangers. So in that I'm public, why not be public and do something useful, which is to get people to come and see the Rangers play. Iraqi situation. But first of all, they're highly professional people. They're great men and women. I get along with them extremely well. And it's probably a bigger pain for them than it is for me. But they're a part of our lives, and we accept that. That's one of the things that happens to you when your father is President of the United States.
Does it go beyond you to the entire family?
You bet, yeah. Sure does, everybody.
And is this more intense than it ever has been, as far as the family extended coverage?
No, I think, you mean in terms of other families?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it probably at times it's been more intense. But I think that, you know, when you're at war, your country's at war, it gets very intense. And there was intense scrutiny, which was fine with me. You never know what nut is going to surface out there. And but I think it's that this protection is the same protection that was offered Lyndon Johnson's kids, for example.
What did you think of the war?
I was really proud of the way George Bush ran it, for starters. I didn't have all the intelligence necessary to make the decision, but I was one of the 87% that supported him. The thing that made me most proud was, I remember I was a Vietnam-era guy. He's a president who set a goal and said to the military, you go out and run the mission. My mission is not to second-guess you. My mission is to support you. Pick the best people you can. And he did with Cheney and Baker and Colin Powell and Norman Schwarzkopf, although he didn't pick Norman, but the military picked Norman. And said, fine, go get him, unleash. And they did. And so I was very proud of the way he conducted himself in terms of the commander-in-chief, being the commander-in-chief. I was also really proud of the fact that he showed tremendous compassion. See, I think his popularity soared not only because we conducted the war well and won, but also because as the commander-in-chief, George Bush showed the human side of himself, which I've known for a long time, and that is he cared about the lives that were lost, cared about the people that were risking their life, and showed tremendous emotion at the appropriate time to share the grief with the American people. So I was very supportive of him and the war.
Did you find yourself getting tenser as that whole drama unfolded?
You bet. Yeah, I was pretty interested in it all. I of course was fairly hawkish. My attitude was, if you're going to draw the line, go get them. And he of course had much more intelligence than any American did, and he knew exactly what he was doing. But I can remember the anxiety as to whether or not we were going to go at all. There was a period of time when everybody was second guessing, and whether is Bush going to move or is he not going to move? You know, what's he going to do? And I remembered all I had to do is hark back to my teenage years when he said simply, George, if you do it again, you'll be in trouble. And of course, I did it again and was in trouble. And he's a man of his word, and I had momentarily forgotten that, evidently. And when he told Saddam Hussein that if on January 15th or whenever it was, if you don't move, we're in, lo and behold, he went. And there was anxious moments there. And of course, there was anxious moments after the attack began, praying that everything went well. And it was, the achievement went beyond everybody's wildest expectations. And that was, you know, we can thank God for that.
Have you or your father or your relationship changed at all since he's now president?
Not really. Changed more during the campaign, I think, for the good. I imagine you and I talked about this. I can't remember exactly, but during the campaign, as you know, I got to go to stand by his side as kind of a youthful warrior, and as he went off to political battles. I hate to keep using the war analogy, but I saw him in action, and he saw me in action, and I think he respected my judgment, my political sense. He carried some missions on for him, and I think I accomplished them like he'd hoped I would. Since then, he has been so busy that the only time I've been with him has been father-son time, as opposed to any kind of professional business time. And so our relationship is really the way it's been for a long time, and that is, an admiring son to hopefully a respectful father. And